Governor Abbott down in Texas said, if you're using public money to install chargers, the Inflation Reduction Act is dictating, then you must include the North American charging standard plug on your chargers if you're using public money.
So that's what Governor Abbott said?
Yeah. So in Texas, if you're going to build it with public money, if you're going to accept public money to build your charger, then you got to have the Tesla charger as part of it.
He gets to dictate that?
Well, he's the governor and it's state money. So
it's state money. Yeah. He gets to have a word about that. Yeah.
Yeah. He would have a say on that. Yeah.
Wow.
I think what's interesting about that is it seems like there's a movement towards this NACS standard now on the EV world. One of the biggest, the toughest thing, I think a lot of EV owners that were not on the, say, Tesla supercharger network, one of the things that we're experiencing was that the reliability of charging and where they were located and the speeds and that they were up and running. That was a big hurdle for a lot of people to get through. And now that, you have Ford, GM, Rivian came out yesterday and announced they're going to go on the NACS standard. My guess is Hyundai Kia is probably next. Yeah. If I'm a betting man, I think they're probably going to make an announcement here soon. So what's interesting now is you have a clear movement towards one standard, at least in North America, which is NACS. But you also have a lot of, call it legacy EVs, that have the CCS port, which is it was the initial standard. It was a sort of, a bunch of automakers said, we're going to use this one, but now they're ditching it in favor of NACS. So I think the thought process in Texas is, since you have both types of cars on the road, instead of forcing people to buy an adapter, we're going to force the charge makers, if they want to take advantage of the incentives, they have to offer both types. Whereas before they only had to offer CCS. So to me, I think it's just I think NACS is obviously the winner here. And I'm curious to see if this will propagate to the rest of the world and not just to North America. I think the transition is going to be relatively quick, because you think about total percentage of cars on the road here, EVs in North America that are NACS standard, it's like 80% plus. So it's the transition should be relatively quick.
Yeah, and Farzad, like we just talked about this, a week and a half ago when I was on your channel, where, they got Ford, and then right after, I think we discussed that they're probably going to go after every OEM that wants to be on the on the network. That, this is Tesla's play, right? They're going to have the operating system, they're going to have the way to charge the vehicles. This is the way that they're going forward with their company. They're going to have their hands on every piece of the EV market, one way or another.
And that does lead to world domination. And I'm hyperbolic like my son at times, but really that's what it's going to boil down to, is that when it's almost like tissues. When you say tissues, people usually say Kleenex. Well, that was the brand. Okay, that's not what it was. It was the brand. And so what's going to happen is Tesla is going to become the generic term for anything electric, because they will own, as Brandon says, every piece of that pie that gets us there.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Can I pose a question to the panel? And I'd love to hear everyone's reaction, because, from my standpoint, I've been very embedded in like the Tesla world, and I'm trying to reach out to the rest of the auto market. So this is my education process. And of course, I'm super thankful for you guys to be around so I can ask these questions. But I'm curious, has the recent developments in your minds, have they changed your mind about Tesla and EVs, their adoption rate and how they're building momentum? Do you think that has changed at all, given the recent developments around Tesla, Ford, GM partnering, the charging standard moving a certain way? Has that changed anything of how you think about EVs or Tesla? I'm just curious. I don't know who wants to take that first.
I can go first. I can say talking to you guys in the last couple of weeks has completely changed my thoughts about EVs. Like, a month ago, I still thought EVs took like 45 minutes to charge. And the newer Teslas are not the case. I actually interviewed a dealer yesterday that has a Plaid, and he does a 7-hour road trip to go to 3 different auctions on every Tuesday. And what he'll do is he'll cut up half the trip, and when he goes and stops to eat lunch, he'll charge his Tesla at one of the charging stations and go eat lunch, and it's fully charged by the time he's done with lunch. So just by having that information, I think this is just a big fail on Tesla's part to maybe they don't need to advertise, but maybe change the word to educate, and that way that people who are not just really, I mean, for lack of a better word, plugged into the ecosystem know what kind of objections that they can get over that they might be worried about going into an EV. And that's even something with me. And I follow the car market, and I didn't know a lot of this stuff about the Teslas.
I personally, I just think as every manufacturer starts to align with Tesla, it just seems to make the future for EVs that much more mainstream. Because, there will be the one standard. And I always relate it back to between VHS and Betamax. And for consumers, VHS became the standard. For the entertainment industry, it's still Betamax. But I think it makes it easier for it to become more mainstream when everything is at some point in time connected with Tesla. They've already established a brand and a presence, and everybody else is trying to catch up to it. Well, the best way to catch up to it is to become part of it. So, yeah, I think it. I think it in the future it makes it easier for people who are considering EV adoption to just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and for me, I'm kind of in the same camp as you, Farzad. Been a Tesla guy for a long time, though I really like to promote a lot of other EVs as well. Hyundai and Kia make amazing EVs with great charging and stuff. So I am excited for that future. But as far as this charging goes, it is becoming sort of synonymous because nobody's saying Ford and GM are adopting the NACS. They're all, the media is like, oh, they're all using the Tesla cable. They're all using the Tesla charger. So it is starting to become the generic. Okay, so and EVgo and all these other charging networks themselves using the plug. They're all saying they're switching to the Tesla plug, So it is becoming more generic and sort of this thing out there. So you are going to get, as Brandon said, the Kleenex effect of all that stuff, where it just sort of becomes generic. But as Brandon and Ray said, what's needed here isn't Tesla advertising, it's education. And I do put a lot of onus, and I've said this for a long time, put a lot of onus on Tesla for that. As you said, they're 80% of the market in the US on the EVs. But so many people are uneducated on the questions or have all these misconceptions. And, and that's on Tesla, that they're not out there educating people. People still have all these old things. The battery replacement is probably the number one I get all the time. It says, and you're in 5,000 miles, you're going to have to replace that battery. It's going to cost $20,000. Like, no, that's just not the case. And it's on Tesla to come out and make this education happen.
Can I add one thing real quickly? I think it will become important for whoever is running a charging network, that they'll advertise that it accepts the Tesla plug, not the NACS. Okay, it's so much easier to understand. Oh, well, does this use the Tesla plug? That's what people want to know. They don't want to know, is it NACS? They're going to want to know, is it the Tesla plug? Because if it's the Tesla plug, I already have that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it becomes the generic term for all of this. They become the Kleenex of tissues. It's it is what it is. I mean, they might not have spent any real money on advertising, and they might not have spent any real money on education or educating the public out there, but they have, over the course of time, developed a name and a standard that is now synonymous with everything that has to do with electric vehicles.
So I have a question going back to the advertising thing, and this is probably one for Farzad. But if they did ramp up their advertising and get a massive bump of orders in, can they actually service their orders? Are they intentionally not advertising because they can't keep up with the potential demand that it might cause?
That's a great question. So that's the advertising question and trying to create more awareness will bring a variable that is there's already so much demand for Teslas without advertising. So their total capacity right now is about 440 to 450,000 EVs per quarter. So they're almost at 2 million yearly. With barely any advertising globally. They do advertising in China. I think they do a little bit in Europe, but they don't do any in North America. So if you start creating awareness that says, hey, so, the charging thing, yeah, it's not as bad as you think. It's actually very convenient. The battery thing, you don't have to replace it. 8-year unlimited mile warranty. I was in the service supply chain. The big crates that had the high voltage batteries, they barely if ever moved. So I have data that says these things ain't really getting repaired, barely if ever. That's just the data set that I have from working there. And then you just go down the list of dispelling those myths. And by the way, the cost, you can buy a Tesla for a Model 3 after incentives in the US, I think is somewhere around $33,000 now. And then you don't pay for gas, you pay for electricity, which is about a half to a fourth of the cost. So you start going down the list, and then people are like, holy crap, okay, so I can actually afford a Tesla, and I've been thinking about doing one. So it will create an issue for Tesla for sure. So I think their strategy will probably be get the facilities ramped up a little bit more, try to bring in more capacity ahead of time, because they did say that they are going to start advertising. Elon Musk at the shareholder meeting said after Meet Kevin asked him that question,
right?
Who's a finance YouTuber, he's like, yeah, well, we'll advertise. So they will have to put in capacity. Otherwise, they're going to run into the issue they had during COVID, which is they had 6-month plus waits, and they had to make the prices ridiculously high so people would stop ordering them because they had a 6 to 9 month backlog. So, and I think the company, every EV maker should be trying to move away from having the customer wait to get their EVs, because this is the perfect time to have them available as momentum grows. Like, you don't want people to wait to get their EVs. You want people to just be able to go to a dealer or go to the Tesla store, place their order, and then maximum 1 to 2 weeks later, you can go pick it up, right? So it's a phenomenal question, and it will be a problem for them to execute properly. Otherwise, people will have to wait to get their cars. And I think the Cybertruck especially is going to be a perfect case for that dynamic once it launches next quarter, because that thing has got 1.5 million reservations, and they haven't even started the damn thing. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.